lot to manage here. We're going to reimagine the teaching profession in 20 minutes. No problem with you in the room. So I am Antonia Rudenstine, and I am the founder of reDesign. And we are a national organization, and we work primarily with districts and states. And the work we try and do is really about meeting districts and states where they are, and really trying to think about how to create new ways of thinking about the work inside of the constraints and the circumstances that you're dealing with. And what Lindsay said just really resonated with me. I think of myself as a deeply optimistic person, but I live in confronting the brutal truths. And I can sound like a negative person as a result, but I really believe we have to embrace those really negative, brutal truths in order to figure out what is possible. And one of the things that is a negative, brutal truth that we are dealing with is our profession. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to just tell you why reDesign, why I started it. We're 15 years old, and we're small, and somewhat intentionally small. And what we exist for, in my mind, is I imagine, and I like to think a lot about, how can we create communities for learners that are truly places where learners are seen and held, where they're known, where they're nourished, both intellectually and socially, emotionally, physically, where they really can become thriving humans who are able to create the lives they want to create after they leave our world. And I think in that, in order to do that, we have to create places where kids can be creative, where they have a lot of agency, where they learn to be independent and interdependent in ways that are very complex human relationships. I think they need to be able to express themselves in really powerful ways and know themselves really deeply. And I think in order to do that and to create that for young people, we as educators must have that. I don't see a way for young people to have that if we do not have that. And I believe that we should have that, and that we should design a profession that is about that. And it's not where we're at right now, right? The brutal truth is it's never been about that, and it's not about that. And as I look at the women in this room, I feel like you are the women. This is what we should do. This is who our profession is right now. So I was doing a little research. I was trying to remind myself. Everybody's like, oh, 75% women, what's going on? Okay. 40 years ago, it was only 67% women. And it was only 1.6 million women. Now, it's almost double that in terms of the number of women who are choosing this profession. And we're at 75%. So we own this profession. It's ours, but we don't run it. And we don't structure it, and we don't design it. And even you, as the unbelievable unicorns that you are, who have made it to the places that you are in, and the seats that you hold, and what it takes to do what you do. Any superintendent, that is true, and then times 2 for you. Right, it's the Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire, she did everything he did in heels backwards. That's you. That is the profession we've created, but it doesn't have to be. And so the brutal truth is it's a hard, hard profession for every single person who's in it, and it's double so for women, I think, because of the things outside of the profession that we also attend to. Not every single woman and not every single man, right? So I'm talking in general terms. But generally, we are primary caretakers of children and parents. Generally, we do more in our homes than our partners do. And generally speaking, the burdens of living in a deeply, deeply patriarchal society and racist society fall more heavily on us on a day-to-day. So we're continually trying to metabolize the stress of that as we do really, really hard work. This is what's happening in the profession on the best years. 8% leave. It's been higher since COVID. It's been higher in the last couple of years. Some people say, it's going to get worse and worse every year. That could happen. That's what teachers say is going to happen. I believe it. We don't know for sure, but I believe it. Why are people leaving? So flexibility, they're moving towards flexibility. They're moving away from stress. So even though we have a primarily female population, the stress of this job is too hard for you as leaders, for them as teachers, and the lack of flexibility allows for too narrow of a life. So I think about that in my own teaching career, in my own life as an administrator. Eventually, I never sat in your seats. I left the profession before I would have gotten to your seats, and I left for these reasons, right? I left when I was an administrator. I literally did not see the light of day for 7 months. I left in the morning at 6 a.m. for the F train from Brooklyn up to East Harlem to a school building that had no windows because it had been built during the riots in the 70s, and the Department of Education could not afford to keep replacing the windows, so they started building buildings with no windows. We worked there all day. We got on the train. We went home. I literally did not see daylight for 7 months. My first duty as a teacher was to sit and guard the girls' bathroom in the basement by the cafeteria to make sure they didn't drink and fight and smoke. These are not health-giving opportunities. It is hard to build a life for yourself as a human, as a well person, as a happy person under these kinds of circumstances. And those are, plenty of teachers and plenty of you work in much harder circumstances on the day-to-day, and you have persevered for many more years than I did. You have stayed in it and with it on a day-to-day in ways that at a certain point I said, this is too hard for me. And I'm an introvert, so the day-to-day of interacting with 120 young people plus colleagues was also really, really tough. Not a lack of commitment or care or creativity, not a lack of love of young people. I have a desperate and passionate interest in pedagogy and curriculum and assessment, that never went away. But the day-to-day of the work was not a good fit for me. But people, and for many, right? Many, many people leaving the profession. So right now, and yesterday, both Beth and I did a kind of flip the script with all of you when we were doing our talk, and we just asked, what are the things that are primary on your minds? And for many of you, it is teacher shortages and retention and recruitment. And I did a bunch of research over the last few months and was really putting myself into this work, because it is, I think, very, very urgent work in the field generally, and obviously for you specifically. And every state now, literally every state in this country has issues with retention and recruitment. And every solution that is being floated right now is what I would call an incremental solution that's unlikely to address this problem. So that's, for me, the brutal truth. The brutal truth is you can recruit as many people as you want, and 8% of them are still going to leave. The brutal truth is we can bring BIPOC community members in and men into the profession, which we desperately need, and they will leave. So we are stuck in a situation where the current set of constraints and circumstances that you all have figured out how to survive and navigate, other people are saying, I am not going to do this. So for me, the optimist in me is woohoo, let's redesign. Let's really think hard. Let's really try and figure out some different ways. And so what I'm going to present, because I am truly optimistic, and I really do think this is an awesome profession. Like, you can do amazing things. We can have the opportunity to do amazing things. It's not totally awesome the way it is right now, except for some people. But let's begin, so let's take a minute. First, before we get into what if, take a second and just call out, why are people leaving your buildings, leaving your systems? What are the reasons? What do they tell you when they leave? If you do an exit interview or if you sit around the teacher's room, what are the reasons? Lack of connection? Higher pay elsewhere. Safety. Mm-hmm. Oh, work from home. Love, yes. So that's my list too, and I would say, and stress, right? It's just really hard. So we have all these things. Now sit there for a minute at your table. Turn to one person at your table, if you can pair up. And just imagine, if you could, I know this is hard, but if you could wave a magic wand, what would you give to the people who are living your buildings? That right now you might be like, I can't give that because the union. I can't give that because of the board. I can't give, right? Well, there's lots of reasons why you can't give things. But what if you could? What would it look like? Just imagine, put yourself there. What do you think would be something that would make it more useful, a better place for the people who are leaving? So just do a couple minutes a person just with each other. See what you come up with. Okay, I'm going to show you. So now, Sydney's talk was so perfect. I am going to ask you to go with me into the future, because we should imagine the future and then figure out our way. I want to go back to the other thing Sydney said, which was the best place to live as a leader is in between, in the paradoxes. And what I'm going to push up against right now is the paradox of conserving versus progressing. I am going to present something that is way out, but not because I'm saying to you, this is what you should do, right? This is helpful, I think. Oops. Oh, sorry, thank you. This is helpful because I think we want to present the two ends and then figure out what the middle looks like. And I believe in the bridges between those, but I want to create something at the end that is to hold in mind. So what I'm going to show you is it's a 1-minute video. There's no sound. I'm going to talk a little bit through it. What I'm going to show you is in the metaverse. So for those, I know this is ed tech, but I'm not sure how many of you have spent any time in the metaverse? A few. So it's a virtual world. It's a virtual world that was created by an organizational psychologist who launched a company called Verbella. This is a work world, so not a school. And that's why I say it's in the future. We don't have this for school yet. And there's a long way to go in terms of privacies and security and safety. So I'm not presenting this as let's do this tomorrow. But this is a work world that exists, that's real, now, not in the future, now. reDesign did a pilot of this, and we're building a little pilot around this. We have a virtual organization. So this is not a made-up world, but it doesn't exist in schools yet. But there are people working on developing this for schools. So I'm going to show it to you, and we're going to look at it and imagine it. I'm going to throw some imaginings at you while you're watching it. But picture yourself there for a moment. And more importantly, picture teachers there and picture some young people there once they leave you and go into the work world. So even if school is not like this, their work might be like this. All right, so let's do that. Thank you so much. I'm going to move out of the way for a sec. It's a short video. And this is, like I said, this exists. This is real. Organizations can use this. It's a long way away from where schools are right now. I want you to notice a few things. What does space look like? What do the avatars look like? So this organizational psychologist was very committed to the avatars having being diverse and being able to be adjusted and adapted to who you are. You can change the hair, you can change your skin color, you can change your nails. You can create any kind of space you want as a place to work, to play, to gather, to learn. It's not the same as being in the woods, playing real tennis. It's also not the same as sitting in a 70-year-old building with lead paint and broken water fountains. So this is the world of work, for white-collar work, obviously, that is coming down the pike. What if it could be? What does it give you if it becomes part of what's available for teachers? So in this kind of a world, school could be 24/7, 365, and that means teachers could work whenever schedule worked for them. I want to be with my infant during the day. I put my child to bed at 7. I get into the metaverse. I work with the high school students who had a job and got home from work at 10 and need help with their homework. I started at 5 in the morning when my children were still asleep. My husband got them up and got them off into school. I worked for 3 hours. Then I went to my yoga class. Then I came back and I worked for another couple of hours, working with kids almost anywhere in the country or in another country. I live in Hawaii. My teacher is in London. She's on a 10-hour time difference from me. So she can work her schedule, I can work my schedule. You as district leaders then can say, what are the things that are hardest for me to organize, for me to staff? What are the people that I need, and where are they? They're not in rural South Dakota, but they're somewhere. They're not in my little small community in rural Georgia, but I can find them and use them and have them, and they don't have to work in isolation because they can meet here. The question of human contact and community and connectedness, it doesn't really happen with Google Calendars and Zooms. We learned that during COVID. It can happen here. So these, I don't know, for those of you who haven't been in these metaverse communities, the way they work is like real life. So if I walk up to you and I talk to you, you and I show up as video and we talk to each other as though we are with each other. And when you turn around and walk away from me, we're not talking to each other anymore. And so that goes away. You over here cannot hear the two of us talking until you come over here, like real life. It's built, I go in my office and I close the door in the metaverse, and I'm in my office, I don't hear what's happening outside my office. It's not like Zoom, and I don't have to be told to go to a breakout room and call back in. It's like a real world. Now, I'm probably over time. Are you killing me? Okay, I'm not killing anything. All right. All right, so I'm gonna just say a couple things about that. So this is out there. This is not now, but it's maybe not very far. Oops. Oh yeah, you're helping me. Thank you. Try not to be impatient. Okay, so here's the from and to. This is something reDesign does a lot. Here's where we are. Set hours in a calendar. Already rigid. You already know people are leaving because they need more flexibility. We know school buildings. We know you can't go get your kids. We know you can't take your kids to a doctor's appointment. We know you can't go help your parents make their lunch. The metaverse, you're doing this from home. I'm not saying no school buildings. I'm not saying kids aren't in places where they are safe, although they're not so safe in school buildings. I'm not saying they're not being taken care of by adults. It's a both and. It's not an either or. We're not getting rid of, right? It's what do we conserve and what do we progress? We move away. We have Ed Crate classrooms that are in whatever shape they're in, and we have no flexibility, to a metaverse where you can design any space you think kids need when they need it. And when they don't need it, you can get rid of it. And when the world changes and new things are needed, you build that into your metaverse. And it does not cost millions and millions of dollars. And it does not need a custodial staff. It needs an IT staff, but it doesn't need a custodial staff. From the teacher by themselves, one person with 30 kids, to almost any configuration you can imagine. And you can bring other people into the situation, right? You can bring near peers. You can bring grandmothers. You could bring community members. You're not limited to one teacher with 30 kids in a physical space. That doesn't mean the kids don't have to be somewhere where they're safe. Like, there's things to work out. You can change professional learning. Both, it can be beautiful. You can be sitting by a pool in the metaverse. But also, it can be collaborative across time zones. You have one physics teacher in your tiny district. They're all alone. They're getting burned out. They have no one to talk to. And all of a sudden, they have a world. And then, of course, you get rid of a lot of you'll never have to stand in front of the bathroom making sure the kids don't smoke, right? So there's a world to play here that buys in all of the flexibilities and lowers potentially some of the stress of what's built into our profession right now, and has the added advantage, which to me is always at the center, of helping young people be in the future. It's not just, it is, they will enter into the world that is their world coming. So I want to just show you, this is possible, and there is appetite for this. So before COVID, 5% of kids had some virtual online learning, tiny. During COVID and after COVID, 73% of districts say we need to figure out better virtual offerings. Look at the number of families. So people did not love what happened during COVID. That's true and real. That was making do with the least possible situation under the biggest stress you could create. That does not mean they didn't think there's opportunity in virtual learning. It just means they don't want to do it that way, right? And especially women don't want to do it that way. Who wants to take care of your kids, take care of the class, run over here, put your mask, right? Nobody's doing this. But the opportunity and the appetite is there, and we can see it because the numbers of kids enrolled in online schools are going up and blah, blah, blah. So there's an opportunity to do some thinking and playing. I'm going to show you a couple of things to support this that are more from the learner side. So in London, the mayor came, this was a few months ago, he came out and he said, look, I want students to think about Croydon, which is a neighborhood in London, and I want them to get on Minecraft and redesign this community and make it greener and safer and more prosperous. And it wasn't a joke, and it wasn't just like, oh, I think that would be cute for kids to do. What he really wanted was people who understood Minecraft to be able to design something in relation to what matters in today as real problems. And so he built this challenge. He announced it. It was a big deal. And kids actually signed up and did it. Kids were already in the metaverse. It's just us who's not there. So look at these numbers, especially here, Roblox. 118 million users between the ages of 9 and 24. Minecraft, 89 million users between the ages of 3 and 21. The kids are there already. The question is, are we going to join them and actually make some learning and amazing, exciting things happen with them? So the appetite from families is there. The kids already play there. They're way ahead of us. We are the ones here. And the women are saying, I am out. Forget it. So there's opportunity. There's a million constraints. All right, a few different things. Where you start with the bridge. I'm almost done. Where you start with the bridge. Because you don't go there as your first place, right? That goes back to what we talked about yesterday, which was, like, you got to figure out what's reasonable to try now, what you can experiment with. So here, I'm going to just run through a few really quick options. So in Gadsden, New Mexico, they connect with virtual teachers for hard-to-staff courses, so physics, special education teachers. Things where, especially if you live in a rural community, a poor community, there's just not a lot of people growing on trees that you can get to. they have permission and waivers to just hire somebody who Zooms in. It's not ideal, but it's a start. At Friendship Charter School, they want to offer more courses than they can afford to hire teachers for. So they're like, they find somebody to teach one Latin course once a day. And the kids who want to do Latin do that course. Or one course on basket weaving, who knows, right? But it allows them to add to what they can offer very, very affordably. In Dallas, they partnered, so this goes to the security and safety issues, they partnered with Stimuli Studios, which is a metaverse type simulation, and they created a small pilot, middle school, very small pilot. It's like 40 kids, 60 kids. They just practiced it, and it was, the kids still came to the building every day, nothing else changed, just this thing, and they tried it out. Very small scale. Another place to play is around differentiating roles. So you can train parents and adult supporters and paraprofessionals. They're not the same, but there's things that can be done where they can play an important role. In Rosebud, the Rosebud Sioux tribe actually takes early childcare providers and provides training and gives them an opportunity to begin offering supports. Paper does online tutoring. You can bring that in, obviously, from COVID and all the money, you've seen that around, right? That's not a new thing. In Maryland, they've just passed legislation, 45% of kids have to graduate with an apprenticeship or a certification. That means kids are going out in the communities for hundreds of hours. That is another way to build a robust, outside the building opportunity. And then last one is in Shelby County. They have decided to create, to really train people with just high school degrees to be substitute teachers as a way to build flexibility in their system. So these are all, some of these are real world, some of these are metaverse, doesn't matter. But the idea is to begin to think about how do you push up against what we think is normal, which is one teacher, 25 or 30 kids, one classroom, 50 minutes, or 30 minutes, or all day. And begin to push up against all the roles, the places, and the kinds of offerings. So there's the beginning. I think that's it. Yay.